Alright, so doing another video about guess what? Well, you probably read the title, so you probably already know. So another modern sporting rifle AR-15 build. This one's fun because it's kind of one of... I don't do a lot of custom builds, but it's a custom build. Haven't done a ton of them, but wouldn't mind doing more. So with this one, what happened, or not what happened, the customer wanted a specific colors. This is Duracoat Midnight Bronze. Like a lot of the colors you see, the lighting here doesn't really do it justice. It's really, really cool color, deep, rich color. It almost looks OD green in this lighting, at least to me, but it is a really nice, deep, rubbed, oiled bronze sort of look. They requested that the top rails of their handguard and their masked off to be black, so you can see the contrast against the black there. I think it looks really nice. So it's going to be pretty cool when it all comes together. So what I'm going to do a little different with this video, or I'm actually going to do two parts. First part is going to be about the lower receiver, and the second part is going to be about the upper receiver. And what I'm going to do differently than I have in other build videos is talk about the tools that are going to be used to do this. The AR-15 platform, as many people know, is very modular. Some people joke it's Legos for grown-ups. In a certain way it is, with everything being so interchangeable and so many different selection of parts. You can build it with very little knowledge about how to do it, honestly. The first one I built of my own, I had these two hammers, a ball peen hammer that I use for other stuff, and a little brass jeweler's hammer. And I used a finishing nail for a pin punch. I had no specialty tools. I borrowed a wrench like this from my buddy to tighten down a couple things, but then bought my own. And as I started my business, bought an actual armorer's toolkit and also educated myself and learned that much more about it. So we'll come back to, or you know what, I'm going to kind of do it as we go along. Go through the parts that I spec'd out for the customer, because this is actually their first rifle, so I guided them along the way what I thought would be good choices based off of what they told me the purpose of the rifle was, which is a general purpose do-all rifle. You know, it's accurate, it's medium weight, it's not heavy, you know, it's not a long-range rifle, it's not a super tiny carbine or pistol build, just that right in the middle 16-inch barrel, very kind of standard build, but guided him along the way to make sure he had the parts that he really wanted or desired. So as you can see kind of right here is my bench block, or not bench block, bench vise, specifically designed for AR-15s. This is from Wheeler Engineering, which, you know, makes a lot of different tool kits and stuff like that. And as you can see, it has a setup for locking right into your lower receiver. And then over here is an adjustable area for your barrel when you have it broken down and everything like that. You'll see it as we go along. And I'll explain the different features of this, like what does this little thing do? So I'll talk about that as we go along and build. As I said, I didn't have any of this stuff when I built my first one. Was it doable? Yeah. Would it have been faster and easier with the right tools? By definition, yeah. But, yeah. Anyway, so here we go. What makes this really nice is holding the lower receiver in one place while you're dealing with all these little springs and pins and your lower parts kit here. This is actually a great place to start. Rise Armament, I know nothing about it. It was a lower parts kit that was in stock. I've used a lot of different lower parts kits over the past couple of years. I've never been able to tell the quality difference in any of them. And right now, we're in another phase of panic buying. Everything's out of stock. This one I was able to get from one of my distributors. Grip. The customer really liked the idea of the MOE Plus grip. I personally use that on all my rifles. I like it's rubber textured already, or not textured, it's rubber dipped basically. I really like the grip. As I've talked about in other videos, I'm very much so a Magpul fanboy. I like the beaver tail that is on that grip. There are other brands that have it too, but just really like a lot of the Magpul equipment. For the buffer tube, we got from Aero Precision, carbine buffer tube kit, and as you can see, it's marked with the H3 buffer. Skipping ahead a little bit, this build has that heavy buffer. So carbine H3 heavy buffer is actually the same weight as the standard full-size original designed AR buffer tube system or buffer system, where it's a longer. I'll show you the size of that in a little bit, but it's the exact same weight. The gas system on this is going to be a mid-length gas system, which is pretty much the kind of new standard. I'll talk about that choice when we're building the upper more so. And then for a trigger, which when people ask what are kind of the most important things, or this customer asked, where do I want to spend my money? And we said, for lower receiver, the thing that matters the most, that you're going to see the most difference, is a nice trigger. Velocity Precision Engineering, or it used to be Velocity Triggers. Honestly, the best bang for your buck you can get in a drop-in trigger. I just recommended getting the 4.5 pound, as this is a dual rifle. I personally don't recommend going lower than 4 pounds unless it's going to be a dedicated competition or target rifle. That's my personal opinion. Plenty of other people have theirs. That's what I recommended to him. He said, sure, I'll go with that. I explained that this is still going to be a nice, very, very nice trigger, and he just liked the straight trigger shoe with the little finger tab at the bottom. I explained the difference between that and the curve to him, and he said, I'll go with the, other than aesthetics, the straight trigger can give that perceived weight much less, just the physics of it. So, got that trigger. I only, again, this is my #1 recommendation. If anybody ever asks me what trigger to put in their AR other than mil-spec, it's going to be Velocity Precision Engineering. Check them out. Best bang for the buck. Awesome design. Super easy installation. Super high quality. Can't go wrong. For now, we're just throwing on an extra M4 stock that I have lying around because, like I said, everything's sold out. The customer wanted the Magpul SL stock. It's back ordered right now. It'll come in. I've told him I'll throw this on. You can keep it until your new one comes in, and then we'll just swap them out again. So I said, okay, no big deal. And then, just throwing in a PMag in the build there. So with this specific lower, in this bag, there's some little parts. We've got 2 screw holes right here. One is where the grip goes in, and this is where, in that plastic bag, there's a nylon tipped screw that comes through there, and you adjust that to adjust the tension between your upper and lower to make, 0 wiggle. Some wiggles normal, even in a brand new build. But yeah, that just makes it easier. So with this tool here, you can flip it around depending on what you need to do, either direction. Just move some stuff out of the way there. How can we see here? So when I'm just building this tool allows you to just flip it around either direction. Like I said, it makes it easier to just hold on to while you're putting in these annoying little springs and stuff like that. So what we're going to switch to now is just a time lapse of me putting it together. I generally like to do that. So, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it after it's put together. So here we go. Quick real-time interlude. A nice feature about this specific lower receiver, which is the M4E1 Advanced from Aero Precision. It's already got the trigger guard in there, that's simple. But it has a threaded bolt catch release pin. This is typically one of the most annoying parts to put on a lower, but you can see it is a threaded, I think this is 1/16 Allen wrench. It doesn't come with one, so you got to have one there, but this just makes the installation of this piece so much easier. Underneath here is a spring with a little detent, pushing against that, actuating there. So when your magazine follower hits that component here, pops that up, catches your bolt back in place, and then if you're releasing that, you're hitting that paddle there. So just tightening this down and then going on from there. Another real-time break here because we're going to put in another frustrating part to put on these. Almost every part's a little frustrating in its own unique way. So it's tool time. So this little tool, or rather two tools on this ring here, are for installing our pivot pins. You might have seen me oiling them. You know, this is an opportunity to just get some oil on some parts that aren't really going to be disassembled really ever again unless you're doing a really extensive takedown. So essentially these little tools make installing the pivot pins and the detents and springs way easier. Lining the holes up, pushing the pins in, everything like that. You may have read or seen people joking about having these little itty bitty detents and springs getting launched across the room and totally ruining a build, not being able to find them and then having to buy it for a couple dollars and then you find it later. Pivot pin install tools, paramount to not losing your mind while installing them. So back to time to put in the trigger. Just want to talk about this because it's a little different with the drop-in trigger, and every drop-in trigger is going to install a little differently. So we have our pinholes that line up with the pinholes in the receiver here. Okay. This one has two little grub screws that help hold it in place. Once it's in there, there's two little screws down in there that that are the set screws that push into the receiver, and then those grub screws lock it in place. That's one of the things I really like about this trigger system. It installs very easily. Literally, it's installed. It just sets in place, put our pins in, hold it in place, tighten down those screws, and that's done. The trigger components go in, then the safety is going to go in, and then that rear takedown pin is going to go in. And we'll take a little live interlude after that. So what's this little rubber doohickey for we talked about earlier? What's one of the features of this? What is this thing for on this tool? Test firing your trigger. So we have a nice rubber stopper so you don't smash your receiver while dry firing while doing your function test. So there we go. And we're locked in place. We got a sweet functioning trigger there. It's always a good idea just to leave that down now while we're working on the rest of it, just in case it were to release. I always do that. You may have noticed, if you know what you're doing, I didn't put the safety in. You got to put the safety in before you lock everything down, or else it's impossible to get it past the parts of the trigger in there. So just retightening down the set screws, which locks it in place. So the screws are pushing that way, which is pushing the whole trigger body up, holding the tension on those pins. No need for external dog bone anti-walk pins that you typically see on mil-spec trigger groups. Next I'm just going to put the set screws or grub screws back in, locking that in, and then we'll be putting in the rear takedown pin. Then we'll install the grip, which has its detent for the safety detent right here and spring, and then putting on the buffer tube component. So another great feature here, like I was talking about, let me grab my little light and make it easier to see. So that little green tip, that is that nylon tip in that screw we put back in. That is going to put upward tension on the takedown pin, the rear takedown pin, to keep the two halves together very... Ooh, I burped, excuse me. I just had lunch. So how do we get to that screw though? We just covered it up with the grip, right? Well, a lot of modern grips have two holes. Whoa! Kind of tricky to do this sometimes. So you can see the screw that is holding the grip in place. That comes from the factory with a thread locker on it. And then we have that secondary hole to get to that screw. So you may have noticed I have very long Allen keys, a set of those that I bought for that specific purpose. It's very easy to get that grip screw, and then secondarily to get to that tension screw there. So it's a nice little feature already built in there. So the next steps, like I said, are going to be, this happens at the same time, putting on our well, where'd it go? Here it is. Our buffer retainer pin going in this hole back here. Our last takedown pin and the buffer tube going together all at the same time. So let's just look at what we got in this box real quick. There we go. That's everything. So we've got our spring, we got a sticker. Ooh, look at that. Our spring, and here's our buffer. Notice it is labeled H3 for heavy. Okay, it's 5.6 ounces, I think, compared to standard carbine. We have our tube, and in this little yellow bag we have our castle nut and our retaining plate. This is going to hold this little spring and this little detent that you can't see right there. That little guy, these guys that like to launch. So this is another kind of frustrating installation point. So yeah, buffer tube assembly, detent, and that last takedown. So here we go, and that's going to be done after this. So there is a completed lower receiver. Again, we just got the simple 6-position stock on there for now. Basic one. You know, there's fully collapsed. You can see here there's points for staking where you literally just hammer and punch that into place. Not everybody does it, because then it's harder to disassemble if you ever decide to change things. Because when you really crank it down with that wrench, it's really not going anywhere. I haven't staked any of my personal ones, and you know, some people might be like, "Oh, you're an idiot for not doing that." I've never had a problem, and I know other people who haven't either. So yeah, there we go. We got our function test on everything. Those pins locking in place in both directions. Locks in place. Our safety, you can feel that detent clicking into place, both safe and fire position. Trigger, we're in safety. Trigger no go, safety. Trigger go. Our bolt catch bolt catch is moving the way it's supposed to. Pins are in place, grip is in place, everything is rock solid, and there's your lower receiver. So again, the tools that make this way easier, this support with that rubber bumper there. Oh yeah, buffer and spring, that'll go in real quick. Really very indispensable, these two little tools for putting in those little detent springs, specifically in the front there. Having some sort of your AR wrench, your spanner wrench. It says beer there. That's kind of just silly. But for putting on your castle nut, and then for your standard muzzle device, and then this, if you have an A2 or the full length rifle buffer tube, this is the standard for tightening that down. This is a really inexpensive tool to have on hand, even if you're just an AR owner in general. So yeah, last little thing, spring just going in here. It's nothing fancy, just bam. And then that little pin right in there that we put in there just catches that in place. And we have a buffer. Hooray. So there you go. So again, the tools, this rest is fantastic. Those detent tools, having long Allen keys with that ball head so you can get from different angles, really makes it a lot nicer for installing grips. What other specialty tools? Those are really the main specialty tools for the lower there. For the upper, when we do that next video, there's going to be some more specialty tools to talk about there that just make it way easier, and also specifics about torquing down the barrel. All right, so hope you learned something about some of the tools that make it easier to put together. And if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I'll do my best to get back to that as soon as we can. So thanks for watching, and have a great rest of your day.